All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to have you all here with me today. And I'm excited about the experience we're going to have today. And that's exactly what this is all about today, an experience. And with experience comes knowledge and self-awareness. So if you don't have a paper and pen beside you, you might want to grab one immediately because you also want to be present today. I'll be sharing some slides, but this is not a lecture. We're not having a test today, and it's definitely not an exam. I think you and I have something in common, and I'll tell you about that very soon. So this is me speaking to the part of your heart that wants to know more. We all want to make a difference, and that's why you're a researcher. It's a holiday today in Nigeria, and we all have a lot of things to do today, but you chose to learn something new. And so I acknowledge your presence. And at certain times, it can actually be very difficult to show up. So that's why I'm proud of you for making it here today. You didn't show up because you put money on the table. So why don't we give you value for your time? My name is Jessica Andrijaja. I am the founder of Legal Nigeria, a classic legal research learning and development hub. I'm a research enthusiast with years of empirical and non-empirical research, and I've learned from my own experience and the experiences of others. I am your host and tutor today, and today's discussion will be with the one and only Dr. Mrs. Grace Ayapo. Did you know that our love for legal research brought us together? She's a lecturer at the University of Port Harcourt, and she has several years of research writing, editing, and publishing experiences. So don't be distracted for the next 40 minutes, 1 hour or so, and you are sure to, you can see on your screen, have a good grasp of the NALT Uniform Citation Guidelines. You're sure to be able to prepare academic papers easily. You're sure to be able to source for materials easily, and you're also sure to be able to structure your writing easily. You see how I prefer to use the word easily? Because legal research can actually be easily done. It doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't tasking or lengthy or involving brain work, but there's nothing more relaxing than knowing what to do and what not to do when conducting academic research. It just makes life very easy. So that's what we have in common. We want to get things done as easy as it can be. In our adverts, I said the 2021 study conducted a meta-analysis that showed that 24% of PhD students have clinical symptoms of depression. And a staggering 71% do not complete their thesis, their research. So I don't want any of us to be victims of that fact. So let's get on with today's business. Today's training, we're going to be going through the rigorous research process. Dr. Rita Browse said earlier in 2000 that the research process exposes you to ideas. It causes you to depend on others. It is an emotional experience. It's a memorable process, but it can also be a lengthy process with unpredictable time. I know we liked the other ones, the other features of the research process, but that lengthy and unpredictable time is what a lot of students and researchers and candidates are afraid of. So today we're going to be taking you through the NALT research structure, the NALT footnoting system, the NALT formatting and proofreading and editing styles, and also I'll be taking you on sources, how to source for materials easily in this internet age. So without wasting much of our time, let me give the stage to Dr. Grace to, let's hear from her. Her voice is angelic. I've been talking. Let's hear from her. Over to you, Doctor.
So the background of, when we talk of NALT, NALT is Nigerian Association of Law Teachers. It was conceived in 2013. So before 2013, legal scholars were using other citation references. We know of APA,
Yeah.
MLA, and OSCOLAR. APA has to do with American Psychological Association. That word makes use of editor and year, and it is written in text. Whereas MLA is Modern Language Association citation style, mostly used by arts and humanities. Then we have the OSCOLAR, something near to own legal style. OSCOLA stands for Oxford University Standard for Citation of Legal Authorities. So that one makes use of footnotes. Footnotes are used at the bottom of the page. So legal scholars were using either one or more of these reference styles, making it difficult for the reader to easily identify. And even for external supervisors, when they come for supervision of students, it becomes confusing which standard they are going to use to judge. Hello? Are we hearing ourselves?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So the challenge we're having before now was that legal scholars were using one or different types of citation styles. It was difficult for external supervisors who were coming to supervise undergraduate students, master's students, PhD students, to know which one should guide them. We find out that most of the legal writings those days were of low quality. There was poor presentation. So there was no customized standard. So it was finally in 2015 that NALT came out with a standard customized reference styles. And in the page that will be shared by my colleague, I think page 5, talks about the aims and objectives of NALT uniform format and citation. So from there, we can see that the objective of NALT was to bring about a standard format and style, to bring about a uniform procedure for assessing an undergraduate, long essay, master's dissertation, PhD thesis. And also, NALT was also to provide a guide through which academic promotions will be judged. And also, NALT came with a localized name, not like that one I said, OSCOLA, but this one, we see Nigerian Association of Law Teachers, so it was a localized name amongst other aims and objectives. So please let us listen to the discussion of NALT's structure by my colleague. Please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. So because of the lengthy NALT guidelines, it's actually a very voluminous text. So I found out in tutoring students and mentoring research students that a lot of people don't have the patience to read through the NALT guidelines. And okay, before I go on, let me take the time to welcome everyone who just joined us. I see some people from Europe. I see students from Ghana. My network is unstable, but it'll get back. Can you hear me, Grace?
Yes, I can hear you, please.
All right, welcome. I see you, John, from the United States. I know that you people use the blue book there, and I see some of my students in Europe and UK, especially from Salford University, of those who use OSCOLA, and our NALT guidelines is just is a borrowed system from the NALT, from the OSCOLA, the Oxford Standard of Writing Legal Research Citation. So welcome from Africa, all over Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. I see all of you. Welcome. Please, as you join, just drop your chats, your comments, and questions on the chat box, even though you can't talk. If it is necessary for any person to speak up, I would do well to unmute you. And also, if we want to see your face also, we can also open it up for you to see. It's Independence Day, so everything is possible. So let's go on to NALT structure. A lot of people may join us late, but by the time they join us, they would have missed the basics. And the basics in research writing is what counts. The little things actually matter when you're writing academic research. So NALT structure, NALT says that research has 3 major categories. So it has the standard format for writing undergraduate final long essay. They also have the format if you want to write your master's thesis and your PhD dissertation. So the NALT calls it thesis for master's and dissertation for PhD. I know there are a lot of variations in our different universities concerning the nomenclature. The US standard says your master's is called thesis. Even your project for your undergraduate level is called thesis. But in the UK, your master's is called dissertation, and your thesis is your PhD writing is called your thesis. So it depends on the school where you are. Most times it fluctuates even in the same jurisdiction. Different schools call it different things. But the nomenclature is not really important. What is important is that you know the type of essay that you are expected to write. If you're undergoing an undergraduate program and you have a legal research essay to conduct, what is important is that you follow the standard for your school. In the UK, they give you the standard for that school. If you're in Salford or you're in Aberdeen, it depends on the school. People reach out to me and say, oh, we have this, we have that, we have that. And I tell them the NALT guidelines works for Nigeria. It cannot work for your system. So if you want me to mentor you on your system, the first thing I need is your research guideline. Every school has their research guideline. So even if I'm teaching or we're training you on how to conduct research using the NALT guideline, please, 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 and please appreciate your university standard. Even with the NALT guidelines, the universities have different standards. River State University, University of Port Harcourt, University of Uyo, University of Calabar, University of Lagos, they all have different standards. The lecturers, the supervisors, the deans, the HODs expect different things from the students. As long as you're a law student, this training is for lawyers or law students. So we expect that you should be able to use what you learned today from the NALT standard to upgrade your research. What we don't want at the end of the day is that you have a tacky work. That's what we are trying to avoid. Avoid having tacky and unplanned research, please. So undergraduate long essay, it is expected that you have 5 chapters. If you're writing your master's thesis, or let me call it master's thesis or master's dissertation. But once I mention master's, you know whichever category it is. If you're writing your master's dissertation, it has 5 chapters. If you're writing your PhD thesis, it has 6 chapters. That is what NALT expects from you. Now, the difference between the long essay for your project, the master's dissertation, and the thesis is the chapters. And because the chapters are different, the paginations are also different. The expected number of pages are different. So because the expected number of pages are different, what is expected of you in analysis is also different. I am assuming that all of us on this platform already understand the basics of research. You don't need me to start defining what law is, or if I say human rights here, we don't have to start defining all those things, because I will be using some legal words and I expect that we already know what those things are. Now expect that the body of your work is divided accordingly. Grace, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to assume that you're speaking on behalf of others too. Okay, please, if you can't hear me, just raise, put a hands up on the chat box. I'll see it. So please watch the screen so that we move on fast. The NALT long essay expects that you have 50 to 100 pages if you're writing your project. And then it says for masters, you should have 100 to 150 pages. I'm emphasizing this because in some universities, the master's dissertation says 70 pages minimum to 120. So you can see the variation in the NALT. So some lecturers, even in Nigeria, do not find the NALT pleasing. The NALT standard is also not pleasing to them because the variations are also different. But what is important is that the standardization is there. So if you have any issue, you have something to refer to fall back to say, okay, I may have made a mistake here, but I took it from the NALT guidelines. You tell somebody who is maybe appraising your research or your paper that, okay, I wrote it according to the NALT standard. Then the person can say, okay, don't do it this way, do it this way. This is what our university expects of you, or this is what our faculty expects. Please, in writing any kind of law research, whether your paper, your assignment, please use Times New Roman, font 12, double line spacing on A4 paper. I see some students who write assignments and they use 1 line spacing. It's tasking to read. Double space it. There are some situations where you use 1 line spacing. If you indent a quotation, or in writing your abstract, those are things NALT says you can use 1 line spacing for. But if you're writing any other kind of research in law, it's double line spacing, font 12, and it's Times New Roman. And NALT expects that after you have concluded with your research writing, you also have your bibliography. In writing your assignment or paper or article, you can have references, but bibliography is expected. And then the footnoting also. NALT expects that we have footnotes. We don't use endnotes under NALT. We don't use endnotes. Please take notes. And we don't do in-text referencing, like how it's done in social science. I have a degree in mass communication. When I was conducting my research, we have to say all students are born equal. And then you open a bracket and you say Amadi 2012. You close the bracket. We don't do that in law. Please take notes. We don't do in-text referencing. Everything concerning your referencing must be done on your footnotes. Please take notes. And then for your PhD, now it says you should have a minimum of 200 pages to 400 pages. So within that range, that's what NALT expects from you. And because you're allowed to have 6 chapters, so NALT expects you to be more detailed. So going to the types of research writing, we have doctrinal and non-doctrinal. Doctrinal is called black letter research. That's what they call it in the UK, black letter research. So it's library-based, it's conceptual in nature. Non-doctrinal is empirical research, involves you looking into social sciences or social legal approaches to the study of law. Please, Grace, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, thank you so much. So if you're conducting legal research writing, what is expected of you in your structure is that you first understand what type of research am I conducting? That's the first question you ask yourself. Am I conducting a doctrinal research or a non-doctrinal research? And then if you decide that you're conducting a non-doctrinal research, which many supervisors and lecturers advise lawyers against, which many people advise lawyers against because of the nature of our research and the outcome, we expect that, okay, if you decide to conduct non-doctrinal research, a supervisor who has the experience in that will be assigned to you. But take note that it's very tasking. I've done it before, and it involves a lot of data analysis where you have to conduct quantitative or qualitative study. Quantitative study involving surveys and questionnaires. You go around, even though modern technology has allowed us to use electronic questionnaire, like the monkey survey and all that people send to my emails. I see it and I answer because I know what it feels like, carrying papers around, looking for who will fill your questionnaire forms and papers. And then you also have qualitative study, where you have social interviews, one-on-one interviews, or social group discussions. Those are subjective studies in nature. That is why most legal researchers avoid qualitative or quantitative study, which is under empirical research. We focus more on doctrinal. There's a reason it's called black letter law, because we want to upgrade the existing system, not based on social science. It's not as if sociology or social science does not interface with law. But when conducting doctrinal research, we also feel and we also look into the impact the law has made on society. So that's why we engage in literature review. In your literature review, you analyze what previous authors have said concerning what you want to discuss, what has been done concerning a particular situation. So that's mostly basically the difference between doctrinal and non-doctrinal. So everybody, if you're conducting your doctrinal research, please take notes. You have to have your introduction, you have to have your literature review, which is your chapter 2, and then your chapters 1, which is your introduction, has specialized and standardized formats. Different universities have different variations on what chapters 1 would entail, but the NALT guideline says it must have these 8 things on the screen: your background, the statement of the problem. Some universities separate the statement of problems from the research questions, and then the aim and objective, scope, significance, and all that and all that. The university must provide you with these things, and you must try to understand what they mean. You don't just walk into a university and you want to graduate with your LLB, LLM, PhD, and you don't know and understand the meaning of all these things. It's tasking, yes, but you need to put a little effort into research writing. Chapter 2 is literature review. Now it says it's called conceptual theoretical framework and literature review, but most schools just remove all the big grammar and just say literature review, because inside the literature review you have your conceptual framework, you have your theoretical framework. I'm not expected to go into the details of all these things. I just want to highlight the structure. But I must state that the confusion many people have with conceptual clarification and theoretical review is they do not understand the differences. Now let me just take a little minute to explain. Conceptual framework deals with concepts. What concepts are important? Because in law, everything is concepts. We're all lawyers, or future lawyers, we know what concepts are. What concepts are important to your research? In social sciences, they say definition of terms. We don't really use that language in law, definition of terms. We say conceptual framework, conceptual elucidation, conceptual clarification. depending on the university. But you are there to explain the term. You can even start with the background, how the term came up, who started it, who coined the language, and all of that and all of that. That's the conceptual frame. So different works have different concepts. If you're writing on human trafficking, you can start with defining what a human being is, or who a human being is, what trafficking means, what human rights mean, what law means, what different things. Those are concepts that keep reoccurring in your work. That's what conceptual framework talks about. And then some thesis and dissertation expect that you have a minimum of some concepts. If you're writing your master's thesis, your supervisor may say, okay, I expect to see at least 7 concepts or 5 concepts. If you're writing your PhD, as much as 10 concepts is expected of you, or 9. So the leniency may fall for project writing. The leniency may fall for project writing. But when you are writing your thesis and your dissertation, don't expect so much leniency from your supervisor and your faculty. And then chapter 3 of our doctrinal is legal and institutional framework. Chapter 3 is basically beginning the gist of your work. That's what chapter 3 does for you. It begins the gist of your work. So in law, we say chapter 3 is legal and institutional framework. And then in between that, in the 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and all of that, you have in national legal, international legal, regional legal, institutional, and all that foreign legal. So it depends on the university. NALT is telling you this is how we want it to be. So it depends on the university. Some universities put your regional framework before your foreign framework. Some universities say, no, talk about the international framework first before you talk about the legal national framework. So it depends on the school. But just get the gist that legal and institutional frameworks is the law, the system, the institutions. That is what the chapter 3 of any legal research, academic research is about, whether you are writing your project, your thesis, or your dissertation. And then we go to the meat of your work, which is the hub of your work, the vein of your work, chapters 4. Chapters 4 and 5 if you're writing your PhD, but chapters 4 for project and masters. That is where you now hear, we want to hear your own voice. In chapters 2, you told us about literature review, and then you told us, what's it called again? Summary of literature, or if some schools add empirical framework, what other authors have said, even the theoretical framework, you're discussing theories of law that ground your research, historical foundations. But in chapters 4, we want to hear your voice. So people say, chapters 4 is not enough for me to talk. Chapters 4 is enough. I can tell what I want to say concerning my research in 10 pages. But because in law, you want to cite cases, you want to back it up with statutes, you want to do this, you want to do that, you have at least a minimum of 20 pages or more. From project writing, you can use 20 pages in your chapters 4, because that is the gist of your work. But in your PhD, your chapters 4 should have some weight. This is the meat of your work. If your chapter 4 is tacky, your entire work is tacky. If your chapter 4 is poorly written, that is your entire research. Chapter 1 is a summary. Chapter 2 is borrowed work. Chapter 3 is legal and institutional. Anybody can get it anyway. When the supervisor wants to hear, if I'm an external examiner, when I want to score or grade you, I open your chapter 4. What is she saying? What is he saying? What do you want us to know? What is the new, what's the gap in knowledge? What are you feeling? What do you want to bring to the table? That's your voice in your chapters 4. So structuring it properly is very important. And finally, for PhD students, chapter 6 is your conclusion. And then for project and masters, chapter 5 is your conclusion, where you have your recommendations. NALT here says we have summary, recommendation, contribution to knowledge, area of further. This is long. Some schools just have 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. But depending on your school, go according to the standard of your own school. I hope that I have been able to explain the structure. I'll also do a summary later, but let's move on to other things. So, like I said, a recap, chapters 2 is devoted to literature review. I'm sure we now understand what theoretical and conceptual framework are, and then the difference between that and literature review, which most people align to summary of literature. When we say literature review, it can be used in pari passu with summary of literature. So you are telling us the summary of what other people have said concerning the narrowed area. And that it is from the summary of your literature that you can draw out your gap in knowledge. Your gap in knowledge is a restatement of your statement of problems. If your research has no problem statement, what are you doing? That's your gap in knowledge, the statement of your problem, which from there you draw out your research questions. Your research questions, which is a replica of your objectives. The statement of problems and your aims are the same, just language difference. And that is also your gap in knowledge. So if you're writing your chapters 1 and you're unable to have your statement of problem, there's no problem. Why not start with your chapter 2? Do your conceptual framework, analyze the selected theories relating to your work, and then see how you can marry different authors and what they have said. That's your summary of your literature. By the time you are done analyzing the literature that you have, you would have drawn out a gap in knowledge. Before you exhaust your chapters 2, writing your chapter, if I'm writing a research or I'm working on something, I start with chapter 2. Because in downloading materials and going to libraries and visiting and doing a lot of research, that is you working on chapter 2. And probably the meat of your work, which is chapter 4. Because at any point in time, you can always get your legal and institutional framework. But if you're unable to, some people want to start with chapter 1 and get it right immediately. You may not get it right immediately. If chapter 1 is not started and perfectly done without visiting the literature review. That's why most times chapter 1 is like, it's written in past tense. It's written in the past tense because you should have concluded your work. It's just like an abstract. You should have concluded your work before writing chapter 1. There's a part of chapter 1 where you have to write limitations to the study. How do you know the limitations if you've not finished the research? Or how did you know the scope if you have not conducted the research? So these are the issues and the things that bedevil the structure. But basically, this is what NALT expects of us, and let's be properly guided. So over to you, Dr. Grace.
I just want to add a little on chapter 3, which is the legal and chapter 2, talking about the theories. You've said they can add from 5 to 7, or if it's a PhD, they can add up to 10 theories. So these theories must be related to what they are writing on. And mostly when you pick a theory, you look at the origin of this theory. What did the authors say about this theory? You can pick as many authors. When you pick up on what theory authors have said, you can either agree with what authors have said, or maybe you can disagree. But if you are disagreeing, that means you have to state why you are varying from their opinion. And then you don't leave the theory hanging. You will now apply how that theory relates to what you are writing on. So that is a little I wanted to add, that theory side of it. And then the gap in knowledge. After you have seen what other authors have said, what is the new thing that you are going to add that makes what you are writing new in that field? Some people may give recommendations. So what recommendations will you want to be applied? Maybe either to reform a law or other things. So we now move to NALT citation referencing.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen, please?
Okay. Okay, your screen is on footnoting, eh?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Thank you so much, Dr. Grace. Thank you so much. I'm trying to rush up because we don't want this training to be for
because of time.
Yes. Now, just joining us, you're welcome. You're welcome. You've missed some good talk, but we're all lawyers or law students, so we can always pick up. We can always pick up where we joined. So you're welcome to the NALT Uniform Citation Guidelines training. And we're about to discuss footnoting. You can also call it referencing. This is a very important aspect of this training. Like I said earlier, this is not a lecture, it's not a test, it's not an exam, but you have to get it right. If your citation is tacky, your entire research is filled with flaws. There's no flawless research. At every point where you pick up a research work, you can always see something to edit, Somebody can always pick something to say, okay, this is not how this should be. But there are some works that are unreadable, I must unapologetically say. And they're coming from lawyers, law students, law candidates, PhD candidates, and all that. Even some students who study abroad don't know how to reference in law. Going through the LLB programs, we know Nigerian Weekly Law Reports and puts it Supra and all of that. Please remove all those things from your mind. There's a lot that has changed with NALT. And I must restate, for those who didn't hear me earlier, who are just joining us, NALT standard is a standard. It remains a standard. And some standards can have variations. It's just if we say we are attending a wedding and everybody must be on pink. Every woman knows that pink can be 50 types of pink. Some will come with baby pink, fuchsia, rose pink, bell pink, pepper pink, so all kind, blue pink. So that is how the NALT standard is. Different universities come with their own variations to say, okay, we don't like this part. It makes the research look funny. Let's do it this way for our school. So that's what I want to instruct you on today. Always remember that we don't do in-text referencing in NALT. We use footnotes. And there's a special way to put your footnotes. I'm very sure all of us know how to do that. Insert footnotes. But before the end of the lecture, I think I'll be able to use the Microsoft Office to show you, for those of us who don't know how to do that, especially the LLB students or the master students who don't know how to use the Microsoft Office too. Please, if you don't know how to use the Microsoft Office and you are a research student, you need to learn. You may be able to draft legal processes, court processes with your secretary, or you may be able to basically conduct research for writing briefs or appellate briefs and all that without having to come in contact with the computer, Microsoft Office. But if you are conducting a legal research, academic work, you need to hug your system. You need to hug your laptop or your desktop. It is highly improbable. Grace, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, because my network is showing me unstable. Okay, thank you. It is highly improbable that you would conclude your research writing in a near perfect condition when it is done by somebody else. Except you give it to an expert to edit it for you. Of course, there are research writing services that conduct all of that. When you're done with your work, you have to give an expert to look at it. Except you do that. But when you want to use a business center or you give your secretary, you write how many pages? Imagine writing your PhD thesis and you have to how do they go? I'm so technologically conscious. How do they say that thing again? You have to use longhand and write every case, everything. You now give someone else to type for you. Please learn how to use the system. The Microsoft Office is very important for every lawyer, and especially an academic researcher. You're conducting your master's dissertation or your PhD thesis, you must, it's not you shall or you will, you should, you must be abreast with how to function with the Microsoft Office. So let's get on with the NALT footnoting. NALT says that it is no longer interested in punctuation marks. I'm not speaking from Legal.Nigeria or Jessica is telling you that. On page 60 of the NALT guidelines, it's written there. You can see it on your screen. Page 60 says that NALT citation guide uses punctuation marks minimally. So you can kindly pick up the last assignment you wrote or the last article you wrote and see how you may have bastardized the paper using so much punctuations. Comma, full stop, parentheses, brackets, colon, semicolon, you frighten the reader. The reader is frustrated with all the dots and full stop. Yes, and too many dots and too many full stops, comma. People get confused. That's why most researches are not read because it's unpleasing to the eye. So now to say, please hold on to your punctuation marks. We don't need too much of it. No full stops after abbreviations. All this, what do people like? LFN, Nigerian Weekly Law Report. Please stop putting those pom that you people put. When you say an N, you put dots. You say W, you put dot. Now it's saying it is not interested. When you put, can you see this where my cursor is? Inciting of cases. V. Please avoid using VS. I know some LLB students still do that, VS. Even in the UK, you see VS when you're citing cases, especially Canadian students too. They use VS. Please, now to saying, just use a simple V and don't put a full stop after it. Please, Abacha versus Fawahimi, big brackets, big brackets, 2000, you close it. Federation Weekly Law Reports. Don't write the full Federation Weekly Law Reports. We are lawyers, we know what Federation Weekly Law Report is. And there's a reason why you have list of abbreviations in your preliminary pages. So anybody that doesn't know what Federation Weekly Law Report is should go to the list of abbreviations and look for it. Now it's saying, don't stress us. FWLR, it's okay. Part 4, some people put the part in full and then also put a full stop after writing part. No, now it says capital letter P and a small t is okay. Don't put a full stop after the T. And then you just write 4, close the small bracket and write your page number. You can always give a space after the brackets because that's just basic English language. And then you put your full stop and then you move. So if you want to separate one citation from another, you use semicolon in the NALT citation guidelines. If you want to separate Abacha versus Fawahimi citation from Gasioku's book, use a semicolon, just as how it is done here. This is where my cursor is. This is a semicolon here. Now, if you want to cite a book or a journal in NALT, the comma comes in 2 places. I assure you. After the author's name, there is a comma. And when you are citing the publisher, you put a comma after the publisher's name before the year of publication. You put a comma after the publisher's name before the year of publication. That's where the 2 commas are. Stop stressing.
It's a technical thing.
Yes, stop stressing the lecturers.
But they will get it gradually.
Yes. It's not more impressive when you use too many punctuations. Limit your punctuations. What is important is that at the end of the footnotes for a particular footnote, if it's footnote 1, even if you cite 5, 10 authorities, put a full stop at the end. That's the full stop that is legitimate there. Put a full stop at the end. Every other full stop, I don't even know where else a full stop is in any footnote, apart from the end. Look at this. Bethel Uzoma Ihuba. Introduction to Legal Research Method and Legal Research Writing. It's italicized because that is the main work. You italicize the primary work. Secondary works are put in inverted commas. And then Malthouse Press, you put a bracket after the publisher. And then, you put a comma after the publisher's name. And then the year of publication. You close your brackets. No full stop, please. And then you put the page number and you put a full stop and you move on. Now, that is for citing books, articles. Please look through the NALT guidelines. This lecture, this training cannot take you on the entire footnote standard. It's impossible. It will run into hours. But please, it's not that difficult. If you're citing online sources, please, the gist of online sources is to make sure you copy the web link. Never cite an online source without copying the web link. I know a lot of students go as far as not getting the last assessed date. So we just put in any dates. I'm not going to stay here and say, okay, judge me not. I always put the correct dates I entered. Dr. Grace, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I cannot say I always use the correct dates I last assessed it because I may not even remember. But what is important is that you copy the correct link. So if you're a person who is always using online sources, please open a page on your computer. As you are collecting and downloading, copy the link address. It is important. It is more important.
Correctly.
Yes, it is more important than the citation of the name and the title of, because anybody that has that link automatically has that that reference. Automatically has that information. So it is the link that is important. You don't cite something from the internet and it is obvious that I can tell that this is an internet source and then I don't see a link. I don't see a link in brackets. There's a specialized bracket used for that. So please go through the NALT guidelines. You would know when to use your comma, when to use your full stop, when to use your colons, when to use your brackets, when to use big brackets. Look at this. Example, 2015. This is where I am. I put it in red. 2015, look at the big brackets. 2 Nigerian weekly law reports. Then you open a small bracket, part 1443. Please, and then you can add your page number after when you close the bracket. Don't say page. Don't write P. Just put 8, 10, 20. Don't use comma and full stop to scatter the citation. This is how you're supposed to cite cases. Use big brackets for the year and small brackets for the part. Even when citing journals in articles, use big brackets for the year and small brackets for the volume and the issue. It's that simple, but it comes with practice. You cannot know it at once. I've been doing this for years, so it also comes with practice. Those of you who have my ebook, I told you that the reason I wrote that ebook was when I was writing my master's dissertation, I was lost. I didn't say LLB, I said LLM. It was that bad. I knew what to write. Even my LLB, I don't want to use the wrong word, but I went into empirical research. I was so enthusiastic about this research thing. I conducted empirical research in my LLB without even knowing what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to give. So I used to see people share surveys and questionnaires, and I just felt, oh, what a wonderful thing to do. I'm a final year. Nobody told me. I don't want to tell you people how it went, but I suffered.
So you had to repeat the whole work.
No, they collected it, but I was treated in a different way than how my colleagues were treated. And I was wondering why the treatment was different. I didn't know that I took the wrong style. I was wondering why I was getting a different response. I didn't know that I took the wrong style. You don't know what you don't know. So some people see, this person says she wants to teach us how to write research, and we know how to write research now. No, many of you don't. It comes with practice and experience. It's not brief writing. We all know when it gets to that, we know that this is academic research. There is a standard. If you don't know it, you won't get it. And your supervisor will keep chasing you back and forth, canceling your pages, scattering your work, carry this one, throw it back to chapter 2, carry this one, put it in chapter 4, because you have not understood. Learn how to cite your textbooks. Learn how to cite your articles. Conference papers, monographs, lecture notes, conference papers, proceedings, those ones are cited just the way you cite your book. Article in journal has its own different style. It has a year, it has the volume, and it has issue. So you must understand that. You italicize the name of the journal, and then you put in inverted commas the title of the work you are citing, the author in the work. Then if you're citing a chapter in a book, now it says there's a particular way you should do it for us. If you're citing a master's thesis or a PhD dissertation, okay, that's cross-reference, that's for US standard. If you're writing your master's project, sorry, your master's thesis or your PhD dissertation, in some schools it's called a PhD thesis, you have to cite it in a particular way. You cite it like a book. All the other information come inside the brackets. Once you give the author's name, you put your first comma, then you give the name of the thesis, which is also the name of the book. You put it in italics, italicize it. Then every other information that is relevant, put it in brackets. Please do not cite articles or journals in your footnotes without putting a page number. It is very unprofessional. It is very tacky to say, I'm citing Jessica Andrew Jaja. She wrote a book. The title of the book is this. You put the publisher in brackets and the year and you close it. You just cited Jessica. What page did you get the information that you are passing on to us? When you are collecting information from books, from journals, from leaflets, from theses, from the internet, I'll talk about sources later. Please pick the page number with it. If you open a book on Google Books and you're writing out one very fantastic thing that has been written yet, pick the page number. Don't just drop the book at the footnotes and then you don't put the page number. You confuse somebody who wants to follow up with your reference. What page do I check for this quote? Assuming the book is 350 pages, then you give a quotation, not just that you paraphrase it. You give a quotation. And you know how quotes are. You must be specific, else it's plagiarism. So when you give a quotation and then we look at the footnote. Sorry, what's that one? We look at the footnotes and we don't see a page number. You stress the people reading your work. So please go to the NALT guidelines. It's on chapters part 3. Everything I'm saying here is from the NALT with different variations from different universities. There's when you should use your commas and your colons, footnote citations, how textbooks should be cited in NALT, cases, unreported cases have their standards, articles in journals, periodicals. There are variations in schools, but if you have a grasp of the basics, you would understand. Look at this here. I'm going to put it in red. Online journals. Look at this. You have the author. You see the comma after the author. In your footnotes, most schools say, give us the author's name exactly how it is in the book. Some schools says, give us the author's first name and middle name, just the first letter, and give us a surname. And then some schools says, give it to us how it is in the bibliography. Different schools have different variations. What NALT is saying is that the author
and some schools says, hello?
I can hear you, yes.
Sorry to interject.
No problem.
And some schools say, just give us the initials.
Yes.
The initials of the first name, the middle name, then the surname last.
What is important to NALT is that the author comes first. And if you take a standard, a format, make sure you maintain it throughout the work. If you're writing a PhD thesis, it can be stressful to take the format of writing out the full names of the authors, because some people don't even use their full names when publishing. So you meet my article online in academia or legal research kit, and I cite it as JAA Andrew Jaja. And then in another article, I cite it as Jessica Andrew Jaja. And in another article, I cite it as Jessica Amarachi Ajonma. I want to cite my whole full name. Let the whole world know that I wrote this paper. You may not meet it the way, so choose a format that would yeah. Choose a format that is easy for you. Make life easy for your research. Take the format of using initials and surname. This is ESPO. So it's not pleasing to cite somebody's full name with the entire names in the first footnote, and then the second footnote, the supervisor sees that you've started using initials. No, you must keep up with what you started. And it may be unlikely that you may be finding articles where the authors, you may be finding articles in future where the authors only publish with their initials. So why not start with initials only? Initials and surname. Initials of first name and middle name and surname. And then the author, after the author comes your comma. Then you have your title. The title of the work. I published a work. The title of my work is Nigeria at 64. That Nigeria at 64 comes in inverted commas. Then you have the journal name. That is what NALT says. I'm not the one who wrote this. NALT says you bring the journal name before the year and volume, and the web address comes next. But in my own university, we say that the journal name comes last before the page number. Immediately after the title of the work, we want to see the year. We want to see the volume. We want to see the issue. So immediately after the title, we have the parentheses, the big brackets that has the year. 2024. What volume did she publish it? Volume 2. What issue? The first one, the second one, issue 3. And then if it was launched on the internet, what web address did you get it? Copy that link where you got it. If it's not a hard copy journal, people are publishing online. Most people don't publish on hard copy journals anymore. So copy the link where you got that. And then it's optional to say, okay, date access. The optionality is if you don't have a page number. If it has a page number, please put the page number. So there are online journals that have full, so okay, a journal is a hard copy journal and has been uploaded online. That doesn't make it an internet source. Please learn the difference. I publish a work in Journal of University of Lagos Law Journal. There's a hard copy, I pick it up, and then I scan the pages of the journal and I upload it to academia or ResearchGate or to SSRM. That does not make it an online journal. It is a journal, it's an article in a journal. It is not an online resource. It's not an online source, please. Don't bother about last date assessed and all that. So that's that for footnoting. And then the difference, of course, we have to talk about bibliography. The difference between your bibliography and your footnotes is the style. In your footnoting, the names are arranged first names before surnames. That is standard. If your school says, give us the author's surname first, please follow your school. But what is expected in your bibliography, because bibliography is written alphabetically, you have to put the surnames first. So when you have copied all of your sources and your footnotes, you have to do a rearrangement, because your bibliography must flow alphabetically. That is why in bibliography, the author's surname comes first before the initials. Avoid all the full stop, comma. The only full stop that is expected is at the end, the last full stop when you cite the work in the bibliography. So that's basically the difference between your bibliography and your footnotes in NALT. Please, I'm not going to go into quotations. You need to see the NALT guidelines for when to cite long quotations and short quotations and how to go about it. Some people cite long quotations and still use inverted commas. You indent your long quotation in the middle of your work and you still use inverted commas. It is absolutely wrong. It's unpleasing to the eye, especially for some lecturers who are very particular about standardization and how your research should look. It's very sweet when you see a research work that has a very wonderfully done referencing and styling. Even the content may not be so intriguing, but because the research has been done properly, because the reference, that's why NALT is focused on the referencing. Even the title of NALT says, we are particular about the reference, which is your footnotes and your bibliography. If this can be done properly, then we would appreciate what you're talking about. We cannot even appreciate the content of your work if we look down at your footnotes and it's all tacky and unpleasing to the eye. And they start failing you from there. Meanwhile, what you discussed is wonder. In fact, it can save Nigeria's economy. What you have discussed in your chapter 4 can actually bring solution to our problems. But because your referencing was done poorly, you miss out. People don't value what you've done because the referencing was done poorly. And you feel bad because you put in so much effort into the work. It's painful when you put so much effort into something, but because of the referencing, somebody flips it and just treats it like it's trash. It hurts. And like Rita Browse said, Professor Rita Browse of the USA, she said it can be an emotional experience, the research process. When you go through so much pain and somebody just uses a red pen and gives your work back like that, they just and tells you from here to here, go and redo it. The professor may not be saying go and redo the body of your work, but the person did not appreciate your work because of your footnotes. Your footnotes can make or mar your research. Another thing I would like to state before we move to sources, let's tell you how to source for materials, is the use of EBIT, the use of supra. NALT has told us, please, we beg you, leave all those things. EBIDEM, infra, what's the other one? There's so many. Leave all of those things. We don't need that. Please use EBID for us. If you have a work that you want to cite, the preceding work, and you want to cite it the same page below, use EBID. It's at the same page, use EBID. Don't say, or you use footnote N. Use N in brackets. I will still tell you how to write articles. We'll discuss some of all those things. Use N in brackets. N5, N1. Don't say supra. Because once you say supra, the case might be in footnote 5. And in your PhD thesis, you're in footnote 220. And you say supra. Who is going to look for the supra? The supervisor? Why not say N5? So that the man or the woman who is looking at your work says, okay, she just cited this case again. The citation is in N5. So if I go to N5, I will see something like 2005, 2 Nigerian Weekly Law Report. That is the citation for that case. Don't just say supra because you cited the work before. Don't just colloquial use of Italic, what is it called? Latin words. Now it's saying limited. Limited, it doesn't make your work. Look at it here. I'm putting it in red now. Now it's saying please limit it. Some other expressions used in referencing. C. Don't say C. Don't say CF. Okay, yes, people use CF. Some schools still use CF. CF is compare. See, if you want to juxtapose 2 different citations, maybe they have different conflicting decisions or judgments, or 2 authors are saying different things, you can use compare. But now says, however, the following Latin expressions have been abolished or jettisoned. Many of us don't know that. So in your work, your supervisor keeps seeing you using contra, infra, supra, ante, opsit, esit, loxit, passing. I know the meaning of all these things. Now it's saying we don't want it anymore. Stop confusing us. Leave all the infra and supra and all that. Just stick with EBIT. EBITDAN. Stick with EBIT or use N in brackets. Once there is an intervening source in the footnotes, EBIT will not be used in the next footnotes. So if you have EBIT, I know most of you can have access to your laptops or a paper and pen, which I said you should hold on to when we started. If you have J.A. Andrew Jaja in footnote 1, and in footnote 2, you cite Abacha versus Tinubu. And then in footnote 3, you want to cite Jessica's paper again. Please don't use EBIT because footnote 2, which is Abacha versus Tinubu, that is Abacha v. Tinubu, has broken the chain of transmission between JAA footnote 1 and 3. I hope I'm making sense. If I'm making sense to you, please drop a like on the comments or the chat box, please. Let it not look like a lecture. This is not, I'm not a lecturer, I'm a host, and I'm your tutor. Please, if you're not understanding what I'm saying, just drop your questions. It may help us to repeat ourselves in the conclusion. So, Dr. Grace, I think at this point, I will breathe a little and let you tell us about editing. Because the basic thing about footnoting is you may be conducting your research and then you just keep dropping your footnotes in haphazard forms. Just drop it. You copy, you don't have to arrange. There's a time for editing. When you're writing your research at the beginner stage or even at the middle, forget editing. Just make sure you take what is relevant. 2005 Nigerian Weekly Law Report, part this, you have that, you have the page number. If you want to cite a particular quote, you have the part, paras this, par Justice, Mrs. Many things you want to say. Put it there. Don't bother about arranging so that your work is not stressful. There's a time for editing. When the time comes for editing, then you sit down and you properly edit your work to NALT standard. So, Dr. Grace, let's stop here for now. Let's stop here for now concerning the footnotes because I take one-on-one sessions and group sessions.
The whole of the day.
Yes, on footnotes. Especially when I have a mixture, of local Nigerian students and international students. If I'm teaching, if I'm tutoring on footnotes, it can take up to 5 hours. And because they need that knowledge, they are ready to stay. In fact, when I want to leave the group, they say, please, we have not understood. It's stressful. And I must appreciate you that are present here today. It was stressful for me when I first started. I concluded my master's I'm not so old. I concluded my master's in 2018. That's 6 years ago. It was stressful because, not because I didn't understand the NALT structure, but that footnoting, I had to learn it. So all about research writing is not just the body of your work or the meat of the topic or your chapter 4. Some people stress themselves. Referencing can make you have an F. Okay, nobody gives an F in research. Even for the pain of downloading one material, you have to have a grade. But it can separate it can separate a B from an A. And for many of us,
an A, and that's very painful.
It's in referencing. The supervisor, both external and internal, is not giving you that B because your research is not your topic was not research worthy, or that you did not do thorough work, or that you did not complete your chapters. Trust me, the difference between your A and B is in your footnotings. I must tell you, if you're able to understand that and get it well, because when a supervisor is analyzing your work, the first thing they go to is they say, your footnote, you didn't properly do this. See how you cited this. You didn't give this citation. You didn't do this. When they want to talk about the structure, it's easily adjustable. They can tell you, okay, take this to this chapter, take this to this chapter. That's easy. So you must understand how to cross-reference and do your referencing properly. Because if someone says, lift what is in chapter 4, take it to chapter 2, and you don't understand how to correct your footnotings, you become destabilized. Especially if you're one of those people who you didn't conduct it yourself, or you didn't write or type it yourself, you gave it to a secretary. You punish the person, or you pay her again to rewrite that thing. Don't forget, once you move something from one page to another, all the EBID and end notes, they all shift. So this thing is actually work. Research is work. You don't expect the EBID to keep where it was when you first put it. Once you move a chapter or delete 2 or 3 pages, the entire work has shifted. You have to start afresh to have new end notes, note 1, note 2, to now say, okay, Abacha versus Tinubu is no longer in N5, It's now in N21. You know, you have to lift things and all that. Okay, Abacha has left chapter 2. Abacha and Tinubu has gone to chapters 3 or chapters 5, like that. So research writing is actually work, what most people don't even understand. So thank you very much, Dr. Grace.
So on editing and proofreading, let's engage our imagination. Now imagine that you are doing an academic writing, and because you wanted to meet up time, you rush the work. You did not edit, you did not proofread. If it was a journal, you submitted it. Or maybe if it was a long essay or your thesis, you have taken it to the supervisor. Think about what will be the outcome of such work. That means it will be full of spelling errors, capitalization errors, punctuation errors, footnote errors, even citation of wrong publications. You have long paragraph with no nexus to the next. There will be inelegant couching of subheadings. You have wrongly arranged table of contents and bibliography. You will even use foreign words without explaining in the body of the word. As foreign words, those are the words that are not in English. Now, foreign words are supposed to be italicized. Like when my colleague was talking about bid, remember the bid in the footnoting have to italicize it. You use a Latin word. You have to italicize those Latin words. When you use those Latin words, you come down to the footnotes, then you give the meaning. Now, proofreading and editing are sometimes used interchangeably, but I will say that proofreading is a subset of editing. Editing is a bigger picture, while proofreading is the final stage of the editing process. Now, proofreading and editing, there are two different stages in the revision process. They demand close and careful reading, and editing is a whole new phase. It's something you need to prepare for it mentally. You need to take away from the screen and books and consciously manage and limit your social media use. This will enable you to be focused. There are places, just like my colleague said, that you have to move one paragraph to the other, or even cut out what needs to cut. Editing now properly. Editing is a process that involves revising the content, organization, grammar, and presentation of your work. Editing is what you begin doing as soon as you finish your first draft. You reread your draft to see, for example, whether the paper is well organized, whether the transition between paragraphs are smooth, whether the evidence furnished really backs up your argument. So now, after your first draft, what you do is not immediately to start editing, but the first step is take a break so that you will return with a fresh eye and a fresh mind. Take off 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 1 hour. Go and rest first. Then you come back with a fresh eye. Now, we can edit on different levels. First, you can edit the content. And the content refers to the entire body of the work. For content to be clear, concise, and understandable, you check whether you have captured all points that topic requires. Did you make a claim in your academic writing? Is that claim consistent? Is it accurate? Did you make an argument? Is the argument logical and complete? You also check whether you have supported each point with adequate evidence. Now, when we talk of adequate evidence, let me talk small on that. If I make a statement of law, like I say, all citizens are entitled to freedom of speech. Did that statement emanate from me? No. I'm quoting from the Constitution. I guess I'm right. All citizens are entitled to freedom of speech. So it is somewhere in my academic writing. So now, since it did not emanate from me, it's not my opinion, but I quoted it some way. That is what we call authoritative statements or statements of law. So you need to furnish evidence for that statement of law. The first point of call in furnishing evidence is that you will have to cite a primary source, which is the Constitution. A Constitution first. If you still want to add what another author says, either in a textbook or in a journal, then you can use it to, add up to that primary source. So while editing, you check whether each point is backed up by adequate evidence. You will not need to cite a secondary source for a statement of law. So you first of all cite a primary source. Now, still on that content, are all the information in your work relevant to the title and the overall writing goal? So remember, you had in chapter 1, you talked about research questions, aims, and objectives. So each time you try to, while editing, you try to find out whether the overall write-up has, tally with the aims and objectives in your chapter. The second level we can edit is overall structure. Does your work have appropriate introduction and conclusion? Now, on the introduction, does your introduction provide map for the body of the entire paper? When you come to the conclusion should be a summary of your work. The conclusion is not where you will reopen your arguments or add new things that were not in the whole of chapter 1 to 5. But conclusion is to summarize. Then the conclusion will also have the recommendations. Now, this recommendation must rhyme with your research questions. Now, always remember to number your recommendations. So while editing, check for those things. Now, another level we can still edit, looking at the structure within the paragraphs. Does the paragraph have a clear topic sentence? And each sentence is supposed to carry one topic sentence, which you develop on. And does each paragraph stick to one main idea? Are there any missing sentences in your paragraphs? Have you identified any important things that might be unclear to your reader? Have you made use of the pronoun properly? If you use he, she, they, which, who do they refer to? So you have to use pronoun properly. Avoid using bombastic words or words that are ambiguous and can be subjected to different meanings. So you just use formal language. Then can edit the style too. Colleague has really talked much on the style. So I will then add to the style maybe formal tone of writing. Most times in the NALT, they prefer the UK. So UK may have, for example, favor, F-A-V-O-U-R for UK. US, F-A-V-O-R. So you are to stick to one style. Not here you use US, here you use UK. So that is style. So you stick to one style throughout the whole academic writing. You need to also avoid empty jargons. Then if you are using, you also use neutral, gender neutral weight. Most people believe that if you mention a nace refers to a woman. So maybe you mention a nace and this time it's not a woman. So you have to also make it stand out. Now, proofreading. Proofreading is the final stage of the editing process. The act of finding, correcting surface errors, the research such as grammatical, spelling, punctuations, and other mistakes. And it's advisable to proofread when you have finished all other editing processes. There are do's and don'ts in the editing process. One of the first one, don't rely entirely on spelling checkers. I'm not saying don't use spelling checkers, but I'm saying do not rely entirely on it. Why do I say so? Because some words that show up misspelled may really not just be in their memory. Look at this word, T-O, two. Look at another one, T-O-O, that is two. So, two and two are English words, properly spelled, you know. So the spelling checker may not know whether it's two you wanted to say or two, whether it's there or dear. So in addition to spelling checkers, still a proofread to ensure that your spellings are correct. The same thing with grammar checkers. They may underline, but they did not state why they are underlining that particular sentence. Now, the third, proofread for only one kind of error at a time. So you may not be looking at spelling punctuation at the same time and other things. In the fourth, read slow and read every word. Now, when you read aloud, it forces you to say each word and also lets you hear how the word sounds together. As you vocalize words, you listen for words that are not placed well. When you read aloud, you are now engaging your eyes and ear to detect discrepancies in your work. Now, how can you perfect your proofreading and writing skills? No, when you do it often, you will become an expert. So it's not something you can just do, but they say when you do often and often, you become versatile with what you are doing. So have a strong grasp of language peer you are working with. Collaborate with other peer reviewers. There are things we can learn from them. And in this technological era, leverage technology to your advantage. Stay updated. Even the NALT guidelines we are learning today, they keep on updating it on a yearly basis. So you still need to go and check, has anything changed before submitting that journal, before submitting your academic writing. So that's a little I can just say. I'll hand over to my
Dr. Grace, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, before we go to the next segment, which is sources, let's see if we have any questions. Please make the slides available to us. Okay. I'm happy to be in this meeting. This is from Chief Justice. I have a test on legal research tomorrow, to which the topics bothered all on the NALT citation guideline and OSCOLA. Good luck to you in your test. Mommy, our speaker, please, I have been searching for a mentor that can guide me on legal research. Okay, we'll get to that at the end of the program. Thanks so much. This is awesome. Thank you too for joining us. You're making lots of sense. That's what we planned to do. Thank you so much for appreciating us. I really appreciate your presentation in relation to the NALT guidelines. I am not a member of NALT, but I do a lot of research. I use OSCOLA as my guide. Oh, that's great. So thank you so much for telling us that. Will not be right in insisting that you are confusing the reader, even when you are using the signals rightly. Well, and even when a definition section or list of abbreviations are provided by the NALT. By the way, what you are using as signals were actually what you were taught by the teachers in NALT. I can only say that NALT's insistence on doing away with supra is tantamount to reducing the educational standards as handed down to them by the fathers of legal education. In all, I appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, this last comment is from Eddie Oga. Okay, thank you so much. All right, I understand what you said, but the truth is, NALT did not just do away with the supra, infra, lockset, offset, and the rest. It was like we started with a prior to NALT. Dr. Grace started by telling us a background to the NALT guidelines, and she said that a lot of research was conducted and there was no uniformity. You know, when you use the supra, infra, loxit, yes, we understand that the Latin maxims and all these Latin words, non-English words, most of them are not Latin, non-English words, add some sort of confirm our background as lawyers. Yes, and I can use them in my research, but for uniformity of standard, because some people don't use them properly. NALT, in doing away with some of these things, is just trying to, the same way NALT says, limit the use of punctuation. NALT is not saying don't use full stop or commas or semicolons. No, it says limit it. So if you want to put supra in your research, depending on your school, it's allowed. But the confusion is, where is your supra? So I understand when NALT says, okay, leave out supra, use ibid. Ibid is not an English word. If you use ibid in your footnoting, you have to italicize it. Or even if you make a statement on the body of your work that is not English, that's not an English word, you have to, if you make all this Latin statement, quicquid plantator solo sedit, you have to italicize it. So that's what basically NALT is saying. I understand that it affects our forefathers would not be offended, even though they handed us something that we appreciate. But probably, which is what my colleague just said, it's updated. NALT may update it tomorrow and say, oh, we love our supra and our infra. Give it back to us in your research. So that's the beauty of education. So it is not a water down of the standard. It is just an appreciation of a guideline that they want to be applicable to you because of uniformity. That's not to say we want uniform. We want uniformity in the research that is being submitted by law faculties. So it's a law teachers thing. The law teachers came together and said, we want uniformity. University of Lagos can't be saying this. University of Abuja is saying this. University of Calabar is doing this. River State University is doing something. ABSU is doing another thing. Calabar is doing, So that's the reason for the NALT guidelines. Not saying that Oscola is wrong. Not saying that the Blue Book is wrong. Not saying that Canadian style is wrong or the MLA is wrong. No, none of all these research standards are wrong. NALT is just saying, okay, look at how, even NALT has its flaws. With due respect to most of my lecturers who encouraged me and my supervisors and professors who encouraged me to conduct this training, NALT is wrong in some places. So even these lecturers who advise that we use the NALT also tell you, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. So they're trying to tell you that the NALT actually needs to be updated too. So that being said, let's go to the next segment, which is sources. I know most of us already know how to source for materials. We already know that there are virtual library and there is a traditional library. So when I mean sources, I mean how to gather your materials. Assuming you're just giving your project topic for your master's thesis. Sorry, I don't know why I keep calling it that. That's the UK standard. For your master's dissertation or your PhD thesis or your project. And you pick up your topic and you tell yourself, how do I start? How do I start? Please make reference to my ebook. There's a lot you can gain from that. It's more, it's emotionally balancing. When you read it, you feel energized to start up a new research. So if you haven't gotten a copy of my ebook, go down to www.h. Oh, I'll drop the link. Let's not stress our ears with all of that. Now it says we should stop all this too much talk. So let's just go down to sources. I'll drop the link for the ebook for those of you who feel you still need it. Please do well to go through it. There's a lot of do's and don'ts in legal research writing. And in a chapter in that ebook, there's legal do's and don'ts for academic research writing. There's so many mistakes you can make. And if you appreciate the energy you use or you put into research writing, you should appreciate the end product. Do not put energy into something that you don't intend to appreciate the end product. It is what qualifies you for the degree, research. I know people conduct taught programs abroad, but I believe that no program is more substantial than research-based. Even taught programs have research attached to it, no matter how small, no matter the credit units, you must research something. That's what qualifies you for to have the degree. You don't just write exams and then you call yourself a researcher. It doesn't have substance to it. You must conduct academic research. So I'm trying to share my slide on. So let's go down to discussing sources. I know some of you may not have the sites that I'm about to show you, so feel free to screenshot. I don't know what I would be sharing with those who attended the lectures. Someone said, please avail us with the slides. Yes, I think for attending the lectures, I would definitely send some things your way, but I don't know what will be inside what I would send because it will be too voluminous to transfer that content. So If you can screenshot, we've talked about structure, the difference between thesis and dissertation. We've talked about your introduction, literature review, methodology. We've talked about, we didn't talk about preliminary pages. Why? Because different universities have different standards. Experience, my own experience and the experiences of others is that when you mentor someone, you also learn. Because if I'm tutoring students who have different supervisors, those students bring their feedbacks from different schools and different supervisors to me. It adds to my knowledge. So I'm not speaking just because I've conducted one or two researches to add to my name. I'm speaking from the experiences of other people. So I can technically tell you that academic writing involves both passive and active voice. I combine both. Some would say, okay, do we use active voice to talk? Do we say, I am this, she is, we are? Do we use the past tense? Do we use present tense? Do we use the doer's voice? Do we use third person language? It depends on what you're talking about, truthfully. There's no hard and fast rule to it. Like I said, legal research has do's and don'ts. Check the ebook and you'll be able to learn one or two things. So we've gotten to sources. This is what I want to talk about now before we end this. I did not want this lecture or this training to exceed 2 hours. We've done 1 hour, 38 minutes. So in sourcing for materials, there's traditional library, which is the hard room library, where you walk into a room and it's filled with books and articles and all kinds of things, law reports and all that. Most universities have libraries, some states have state libraries, institutions set up libraries. And then there's the internet. The internet avails you a virtual library, and the internet is so widely used in conducting current legal research because what your university or your state cannot get as hard copy to update its library, the internet has done so for you. Immediately an author uploads it. Some authors even upload their work even before the hard copy version. Some people publish online even before they publish hard copies. A lot of people ask me, I want a hard copy of your ebook. And I tell them, the hard copy would come out. I don't want to say I'm an electronic person, but I'm e-compliant. I know people who are in different countries who have been able to download the NALT, the ebook. It wasn't really on NALT. Downloaded the ebook. If I present a hard copy, it's limited to Nigeria or those who are willing to pay shipping fees. And we know how much dollar is now. So not see the need to want to first get a hard copy. The same goes for research. Let's forget about the ebook for now. The same goes for your sources. When you say my research is on contemporary issues, and if I was your supervisor, or all I see in your footnotes and your bibliography is textbook, 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 it gives me some level of distrust. Yes, there's levels to research sources. There's priority, there's seniority. Books, articles, even the case laws, the statutes before case laws. Yes, there's who seniors who and what is senior to the other. But for contemporary research, you cannot avoid the internet. So there are several ways to go about it. You can mix your traditional library with internet sources. Go ahead, enter the library, get your books. But I assure you, someone else who is on the internet can equally source for those books. There are some books that are basically traditional. Only hard copy versions exist. So if it's a particular author that is renowned for that issue, you want to get something on human rights, and it was written by Professor Mozurike, and he doesn't have an e-copy on the internet, you have to source for the hard copy. That's not negotiable because you need to cite him. So you need to go to the libraries that have those books. But thanks be to the internet and the creators of different sources and pages, you can access these things online. So we have preprint servers, sites like SSRN, RXIV. They offer preliminary versions of research papers even before peer review. So if I upload my paper on SSRN, I don't need peer review. I don't need other people to look into it. I just write something and it's my page. I upload it. Then we also have authors' personal web pages. If you visit my web page, some people publish on their LinkedIn profiles. Some people publish papers on their law firm office profiles and all that. That's authors' personal web pages. So if you upload to that and you see it on the internet, that is an internet source because it's a web page. So you can copy from that and also cite the source, copy the address, the link address, and cite it. Depending on the what's it called? In evidence, it's called weights attached to the evidence. So if you're giving your evidence and you know that this is the only evidence you have, you need the court to attach so much weight to that thing so that it is able to make the court give judgment in your favor. You can also use open access journals. You can go about it with Google Scholar. You can also Google Scholar. While not all articles are found through Google Scholar, not all of them are free. Not all of them are free. So here's a list of websites to ease your search for secondary legal sources. So most of these websites aid you in secondary sources. Of course, we're lawyers and law students. We all know what secondary sources and primary sources are. Primary sources, your statutes, your laws, your laws, yeah, your statutes and other type of laws, subsidiary legislations, your case laws, administrative statements and all of that. And then your secondary source, those are primary sources. Your secondary sources, obviously, you have every other thing that is not law. Every other thing that is not law is secondary to law. So you have authors' works, you have published works, unpublished works, personal statements, everything that is not law. And you can find most of this is online in people's web pages, sites like academia.edu. Screenshot this page, please, if you're currently engaged in research. Academia.edu. When you open it, sometimes some of them are free, sometimes you can have access to some free works, and other times you may have to pay subscription fees to access the depth of the website. There's ResearchGate. If you type it on Google, most of these things will just pop up. Google Books too. There are some books that you can't see on any page except on Google Books. So you open your Google, you type what you want to type, show you books. You have to go to Google Books. It's a separate segment. There are materials you can get from pdfdrive.net. There are materials you can get from SSRM. That's a preprint server. There are materials in Library Genesis, Skyhub, Dimensions, On Paywall, and Researcher. So these are secondary sources where you can get them. ResearchGate and Academia are trusted sites where renowned authors from all over the world put up their articles in journals. So you can also contact the author directly. If professor is still alive and he wrote a book or something in 1985, and that is what you want to review, the current position now, simply check if the professor is online. Check if he's on LinkedIn. Check if his school has his email. You want his book and nobody seems to have it. You have to ask the author. So contacting author directly is also a way to source for your materials, apart from Google Scholar. And then use university libraries. Some universities give grants just for you to come over to use their libraries. I know South Africa is currently running one now. And then overseas, you travel to US, UK, they say come, especially for postdoctorates. They say, come conduct studies, use our libraries. We have fantastic things here. In fact, they want you to publicize what they have. Come with your camera too, so that you take a picture of what we have here and help us show the world that we are #1 in research. So those are things you can get from the internet. I hope we are all following. Sorry about those who lost me. Please do well to join us. We'll be here till 2. And that's that for sources. So I'm not going to discuss virtual library or traditional library. I just want to point out that these are places where you can get your materials, especially your electronic sources or virtual libraries. Yes, so we will be concluding soon, but I want to just see if we make sure, I want to make sure that some things are stated. Footnotes are short numbered notes that are placed at the bottom of the page in any article or essay. Bottom of the page, after the word you want to reference, and after what's it called? A punctuation mark. Please, let's be particular about all these things. You may even miss the punctuation mark, but please do not put your footnotes before a word. It's very tacky. I have seen it before, so it's not proper. The footnote numbering is placed after the selected word, and use it when necessary. There's no hard and fast rule to the number of footnotes that you should use in a work. There's no hard and fast rule to the number of footnotes you should use in a work. What is important is that you use footnotes when necessary. And the essence is referencing. It's strictly referencing. Now it says don't talk too much. Now doesn't allow for discussions in footnotes. So writers use footnotes for several purposes: citations, copyright permissions, backgrounds, but now to say in the thing you want to put in your footnote, please, no talk. Don't start saying, oh, human rights can also be defined as, you start talking about that in your footnotes. That the supervisor would say, this person has definitely not read the NALT guidelines. So why not equip yourself? Yes, why not equip yourself even before you submit your first draft, so that you look like somebody who has done the work before, or at least you look professional. You you're one step away from plagiarism when you use footnotes the proper way. That's the truth. But also, even when you cite your authorities, plagiarism can still catch up with you because there are so many things attached to plagiarism. Yes, so with time, you will learn what is plagiarism and what is not plagiarism. But for now, stick to referencing properly. Footnotes is a very powerful tool in legal research writing because we don't do in-text referencing. We don't say Abba, father, and we put it in brackets and we put 2024. Abba said this. No, we put it in the footnotes. Abba said this. What year? Where? Which book? If it's an internet source, what is the site? You must cite it properly. Those social science sources that just put the year and the author, it's truly, sorry, excuse me, it's truly misleading. I must say that, even though I'm also one of them, but it's misleading. So someone may ask, are footnotes and bibliography the same thing? Yes, technically, all bibliography entries end with a period. Technically, everything that is in your footnotes ends up in your bibliography. Every reference, not discussion, every reference in your footnotes has to end up in your bibliography. And then the footnote, the first name comes first, but your bibliography, the surname comes first. So place the cursor beside the word and click Control, your alternate Control and F, and that's your footnotes. So if you can't find the insert footnotes, use alternate Control and F. And there's a 5 footnotes rule. I know that I may send these materials to you, all of you. So I'll skip the 5 footnotes rule. That's that. So footnotes provide us with extra information that is not appropriate to include in the body of the text. You have to footnote every sentence. Not really. No, you don't have to footnote every sentence. But like Dr. Grace stated earlier, there's when to cite and when not to cite. When you make a doctrinal statement, please cite. You know what doctrine is? A law. Doctrinal statement. Like law, it's attached to something. You must provide it. That statement did not come from you. When you make opinions of other, when you make reference to opinions of other authors, please cite them. When you state your own perspective, please cite it. Your perspective, you can't cite yourself, but your perspective is based on something. So when you say, I'm citing because I stated my opinion, you are citing sources that support your opinion. Or if it is in a place where you say CF, you're citing sources that are in contradiction to your opinion. So you say CF this. I made this statement, but this person doesn't agree. So CF this person. When you make a statement of fact, there are 2,000 hungry Nigerians in River State. You have to cite. You can't just leave such a statement and keep moving. The moment somebody picks up that work, a supervisor or an examiner picks up that work and says there are 200 million hungry Nigerians in River State. Okay, not 200 million people in River State. Let's just say there are 2,000 hungry people in River State or Lagos State. Where did you get that information? Yes, that's not law. That's not law. That's social fact. So you have to show. That's not you. You didn't conduct that study. There's no way you conducted the study. So you got it from somewhere. Please cite. That's a statement of fact. You have to cite it. So that's for that, when to cite. So in most cases, word limits are not used. Some schools say your thesis, your dissertation should not exceed a particular about page numbering and word numbering. So they say we don't want more than 15,000 words. We don't want you to exhaust our energy, or we don't want you to give us everything you know. It's called a research. Leave some for other people to search in the future. Don't conduct everything. Don't solve all the problems of the world. Just pick one small part. That's your gap in knowledge and solve that one. Leave the remaining problems for other researchers to come and solve. So they say limit your work to 15,000 words. Okay, so that's about 70 to 80 pages. You're able to conclude in 50 pages sometimes, depends. So it depends on the school. And that's that for footnotes. Footnotes can also be used for permissions. I've also stated that we can't go back to this because of time. There's citations and all that. I think I'll share this with all the attendees, how writers are supposed to include semicolons and all that and all of that. So abbreviations, like I said earlier, now says please limit all this FF. FF is see the following pages, or rather, and the following pages. We don't do that anymore in law. We don't anymore. We don't apply this at all. I know some of us still use that at all, the short form for et alia. No, please remove it. And others. You want to cite a book, there are 5 authors, or an article, there are 6 authors. Don't say C. Emeka, B. Bello, A. Alfred, M. Balogun. No. You just keep the first one and others. Don't say at all. Please, now it says they're tired of all of that. It used to look very nice before because it's our legal jargon, but now it's saying please use and others. And then CF, of course, I've mentioned CF severally. CF means compare. We still use that now when you want to compare 2 different things. And then id. Id is still being used. So now they're not totally dispose of everything, all the non-legal referencing languages. Id is still used. Id is evident. So it's short for saying for everything else under our referencing style. So that's that for footnoting. I hope, and I know, I don't just hope, I know that you have been able to get 1 or 2 things. Dr. Grace, do we have any final words from you, please?
I want to thank the participants so much for the data, the time, and in future, we hope to be holding similar sessions to learn more. Thank you very much.
All right. So final words.
Yes,
I would say that we have come to the end of today's session. And I hope the past 2 hours have been thrilling for you as it has for me. And you don't owe Dr. Grace and I anything. What you need to do is practice. So for a recap, here's what you take home. The number in referencing comes after the statements. Surname alone is used in in-text referencing. Sorry, footnoting. Leave the titles alone. Dr. Grace wrote a book. Please leave her doctorate out of the referencing. Just cite her as G. Ayako in your footnotes. Don't say SAN Grace Ayako. No, it's unprofessional. We don't accept it. Even in the body of the text, you want to cite Dr. Grace's book. We don't say Dr. Grace, renowned learned author, stated in page this. No. Just say Ayako stated in. Ayako expressed that. It's enough. She has her titles wherever she is. She doesn't need you to express her titles in the body of your work. Copy internet source links, very important. Many of us forget that. Don't write a book or article in your footnote without dropping the page number. Use big brackets for your cases and your case years and your journal years. And you need to be able to cite the author properly when you're citing it. Italicize the main source in your book. If you're citing a book, italicize the title of the book. If you're citing a journal, article in a journal, italicize the name of the journal. Cite a thesis like a book, cite a leaflet like a book. Forget supra and infra, use id, and n in brackets. And then order of priority, you need to read the NALT to know the order of priority in your footnotes. When citing, if you have different sources, the statute comes first. Don't cite an internet source first, then you attach section 5 of the Constitution behind it. Please don't do that. Any supervisor that sees that would use not a blue pen, we use a red pen to cancel it with anger. So citing has has priorities. The statute, the case, then your book, your article, newspaper publication, and internet sources are usually cited last. So it's like when you're placing the evidence that you have, you give the strong one first, then you keep like that till the list of it. Avoid discussions in your footnotes. We said that. And then get a copy of the NALT guidelines and read it. It's not that difficult. You have to read it. So if you require a one-on-one session or group online session, feel free to send an email to legal.nigeria@gmail.com or send a WhatsApp message or to the numbers on the flyers we use to advertise for this training. So until we meet again, Dr. Grace has said her goodbyes. Keep your research game up and have a happy and peaceful holiday. Let me show my face first before I leave. So thank you all so much for, I had to remove my video because I'm sharing screen and I'm looking at my phone to see messages. I'm checking my emails. So I don't want to use my video to distract you. So that's why a lot of you could not see my face during the training. But my face was up before we started, and my face is here saying goodbye to you and thank you. And this is batch 1. I don't know if we're going to have a free session. This is an anniversary session. That's why it's free. I'm a lawyer too. I'm paid to do what I do. But the trainings and mentorings, if you need one, please send an email to legal.nigeria@gmail.com. Get a copy of the ebook, and you can have one-on-one with Dr. Grace if you want to discuss with her. She's at the University of Port Harcourt. She's a lecturer at the University of Port Harcourt. If you want to discuss with her, send her an email. The follow-up after this, I would put her email address so that all participants would have her email address there if you wish to have a mentoring session with her. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know we have holiday activities. I hope we are peaceful with our protests. I know protests are going on in some places. So thank you so much. If you're participating in the process, remember it's peaceful. Fight and live to fight another day. So thank you all so much and have a happy new month. Bye.